Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Star Wars comic review. This one's going to be for Star Wars Kanan issue number 10. Again, late getting this out. I've just been completely messed up every single time there's been an issue the last couple of times, but I have it now and I'm ready to review it, and hopefully I'll be able to get the final two issues, 11 and 12, as they come out and be a bit more on time with them. So yeah, overall, issue 10 I thought was good. It was just that kind of middle chapter of kind of this kind of little arc that they're doing now, the getting to the battle with Grievous. Like, the cover is very kind of misleading in that Grievous doesn't appear until like the very end of this issue, and it's the build up to what happens here is very much like, okay, here's why we go to Magneto, here's us doing stuff on Magneto, some stuff happens, then, surprise, Grievous arrives and Kanan's in a conflict with someone else. Like, it's not just misleading because of Grievous not really fighting in this issue and stuff like that. It's misleading because there seems to be setting up Depa Billaba versus Grievous rather than Kanan versus Grievous. So, anyway, let's get into it. So, as usual, we start off on the planet Kalar, with basically the framing device that's being used for this series, which is Kanan, having been stabbed upon the return to Kalar, is in a back of the tank. The Empire's outside, they're just about to break in. He's unconscious, still healing, and the rest of the crew, Hera, Zeb, Ezra, and so on, are there basically watching over him and hoping something's going to happen, while Jaller, Kanan's former friend, is on the outside asking them to attack, and we don't really know what's up with him. But basically what we get is the start of the attack. The stormtroopers burst in, the fight begins, and there's way too many of them. They're going down. There's no room to move. We see... I think what we're getting here is that Kanan is starting to move in the back of the tank. But you get this actually really nice double-page spread where you transition very effectively from the kind of present-day story we're being told to the flashback that Kanan's getting, in the sense of like, okay, he was shot at the end of the last battle. He's in a back-to-tank now, recovering from those wounds, and in the present day he's recovering from a stab wound. So yeah, we get Stance, who's obviously the young clone trooper who saved Caleb at the time and got his name and is now somewhat respected, while Kanan obviously went down, and they have a certain respect for him because he was pretty good in the battle until he got shot. But you get the idea that this clone trooper who kind of Caleb has become friends with has kind of surpassed him a little bit in terms of respect in the army at the time. And you just get a nice little back and forth between the two of them. Like, Stance now thinks he's a veteran, saying, like, you're my responsibility, kid, and Caleb's like, don't, thanks for everything, but don't call me kid, I'm way older than you, just referencing the fact that, okay, Stance looks like he's around the same age as Caleb at this point in time, like 16 or something like that, but that would make him only 8 because of the accelerated aging and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting. But anyway, he recovers. The mission on Cardova was a success, apart from the fact that he was shot. He then just cut to basically explaining that their next assignment is to war-torn Magneto, and they just basically want to finish this fight without him ending up in the back of the tank again. And they established that this is the third battle of Magneto. I'll explain the whole Rebels reference in a moment, but yeah, you just get them arriving there. You have Commander Gray and Depa Billaba kind of talking together, and they both refer to Caleb and Stance as the kids. And again, you get that kind of joke that they keep going back to here, that the rookies don't like being called kids because they're quite good now. And yeah, you just get the idea through Caleb's dialogue here that, like we got at the very start of the series, issue 1, he seems to have found a home for himself, a place where he belongs on the battlefield for some reason. And, basically he just says, the learning curve is dangerously steep, but I rise to the challenge or duck as needed, and he's doing really well in this battle. He's learned from what happened, and what we get from there is basically this conversation that just happens because Deborah Blab was fighting, and while she's fighting, her robe gets shot off, basically. It kind of gets burned, and she kind of tosses it aside. And she just says, sacrifice for the greater good. And then she explains to him, but remember, Padawan, not all sacrifice is as easy to dismiss. There will be loss, inevitable loss, painful loss, but that must not prevent the true Jedi from taking risks, from surrendering oneself to a higher purpose. And then we get a nice moment here where he seems to have a vision to Order 6 happening, the death of Depa Billaba. The vision that he has doesn't quite show, like, her being killed, but the idea is that, like, clone troopers are pointing blasters at her, and he doesn't really know what to think about it, and he doesn't really understand what it is, but it's a really interesting moment that they actually are foreshadowing that event happening. That to some extent, Depa Billaba, just based off that panel, seems to kind of have had that vision herself, that she is aware that this is going to happen, and that the only thing she can do is kind of sacrifice herself to protect Caleb for the future, and that's what she sees as a higher purpose, because potentially she sees him as having more potential than even herself. That's why she was so eager to save him and put herself on the line. So they seem to be doing something very interesting with that. Though it will be interesting to see where they go with the battle with Grievous and stuff like that. But anyway, they're doing quite well, but suddenly they're attacked. They have this kind of interesting sequence where there's battle droids just climbing up this tower that they're on, and they're really struggling. There's way too many of them, and there's only like 4 of them. It's Billaba, Commander Gray, Stance, and Caleb are the ones basically holding down this tower from like thousands of battle droids. They're doing okay, but there's no time to do anything. They do contrast this, there's no room to move, no way out here, with the very first page where Hera's saying effectively the same thing. There's too many, no way to move, no way out. So that's kind of what triggers this flashback for present day Kanan. So what happens here is we get the reference that we got in one of the more recent episodes of Star Wars Rebels, which was not the last episode that airs, but the one before that, the Protector of Concord Dawn. We got Fen Rao and his Skull Squadron. Kanan thanks him for saving him during the Battle of the Clone Wars, the third Battle of Magneto. And here's where we get that happening. That's the same ship that he had, and it's a younger Fen Rao coming in, blasting a lot of these battle droids away, and basically saving the day for them. And he just introduces himself at the very bottom of the page here, saying, "My name is Fen Rao, General, and Skull Squadron is happy to demonstrate that not all Mandalorians have forgotten their honor and obligations." And Kanan just mentions in his inner dialogue, never did get to meet Fen Rao in person, never got to thank him, which is obviously referencing the fact that he thanks him in the most recent episode. I think that's a really cool reference to have, that when this comic came out, that was the episode that was airing basically the same day, because comics come out on a Wednesday, Rebels episodes air on Wednesday. So effectively, I think for most people, they would have picked up the comic on Wednesday, read this thing about Fen Rao, and then you meet him again in the present day. That's a really cool thing that they managed to time that kind of so perfectly. But anyway, they go to a new section of the battle, and it's looking really bad. Like, there's no one there. The troops that called for help aren't even there. Suddenly, explosion goes off. Their ship is destroyed, and it's the 4 of them stranded, and Caleb's on the ground, stunned by the explosion. Stance is standing behind him saying he's going to have his back, when suddenly Stance goes down dead. And we get the reveal that this guy, this kind of ninja guy from before, whose name is revealed in issue 8. Let me just look for it here. His name is Rackham Seer of Corzide, captain of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. And there he is, unmasked. He has had a run-in with these guys before. But, so you have this thing that Caleb has just experienced the death of this this clone trooper who he's become friends with. who saved his life, and he's been unable to save his, and now Seer is about to attack him. But as Depa Billaba is about to confront him, she turns around and is confronted by General Grievous, which is where we end the comic. So what they seem to be going for here is Depa Billaba versus Grievous, while Caleb takes on Rackham Seer. Don't know exactly if it's going to play out like that, if it will be like 2 1-on-1 fights, or if it will be 2-on-2. We know they both survived this fight. We know Grievous survives the fight. But I think for Billaba, what they're going to want to do here is have some sort of a redemption for her, in that she was injured and in the back to tank herself before, because tactically she wasn't great the last time she went up against Grievous, and so many of her men were killed and she was injured herself. I think what she would want to do here is somewhat best Grievous in combat here and force him to escape and still win the day. I think that's perhaps what they're going for, and then maybe Caleb ends up defeating Rackham Seer, but I'm not fully sure. He seems like a bit of a random character. I'm not so sure about what they're going for. But anyway, the next issue, it says, is out 24th of February, so it's still like 2 weeks away. I'm excited for it because what seems to be happening with the last 2 issues is that the last issue, next issue, is going to resolve the flashback. And then issue 12, the final issue of Kanan, is going to be set all in the present day. So I'm kind of excited to see what they do there, because the one thing, as I've said before in these videos, I'm not really sure what they're going for in the present day story. Okay, Kanan is returning to Kalar. He's probably going to meet up with Jaller at some point, and something's going to happen there, and there's going to be some development for Kanan that this whole series was leading up to. I don't have any idea what that is right now, and that's a little bit of a flaw of the comic itself, or not like the present day story that they're using to start off every one of these past couple of issues isn't really working all the best. I'm invested in the flashback because I really want to see how this battle goes, because they've set up a kind of rivalry between Billaba and Grievous. This guy Seer, even though I don't really care too much about his character, he has had a run-in with these two before, and so how he gets resolved is going to be exciting. And then, further just development of Kanan as a character, and the relationship between Billaba and Kanan as well. So, there's a lot of potential still. I just think you can sort of tell that this has been extended out. It was initially like 5 or 6 issues, and then it sold well, so they continued it. You can sort of tell it's been extended out a little bit more than perhaps the story that they had. But I'm still invested enough that I want to know what happens next. And that's definitely a positive for the comic. So, yeah, solid issue. I don't think, as I said, that there was as much as some of the other issues, in that the main things here are that, like, okay, Stance dies. And they actually did a good job at building up his character in like the last issue, the friendship that he had with Caleb, which also just establishes that Caleb Kanan was a character who had no problems just becoming fast friends with these clone troopers, and he lost a lot of his friends, clone troopers, along the way, but he got along very well with a lot of them. And you have this clone trooper who owes him his life, and then I suppose they're trying to link it to the fact that Commander Gray and Captain Styles have had so much experience with Billaba and Caleb that I think it's Gray, who's the one who kind of goes against the Empire, Order 66, and kind of blows up his own ship to allow Caleb to escape, kind of redeem himself somewhat for the whole Order 66. I think they're building a decent story with regards to how he sees clone troopers, which is kind of further establishing stuff from Rebels, where you see why he was so against becoming asking Rex and the other clones for help in the series, and why once he gets past that, he actually is very quick friends with Rex. So there's a lot of kind of subtle stuff that they're doing that's referencing the show quite well, because obviously it is the secret history of Kanan from Star Wars Rebels. So in that sense, it was a solid issue. It's just, as is the case a lot of times with Kanan, it's just a lot of like, okay, there's only like one or two notable things that really happens here. The build really here is battle happens. There is the loss of a character in stance, set up for Grievous, and the fights for the kind of last issue of the flashback. So, yeah, solid issue. Not the best, but that's the end of the review. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the issue, on the review. Other than that, thanks for watching this video, and bye.